Alright boys, let's do this, man. Reviewing every single rare in the entire game of Raid Shadow Legends. Some of these reviews are going to last 3 seconds, frankly, because some rares are not even worth looking at. They're just trash and auto food for every single account in the game, whereas others we can discuss for like 20 seconds before we move on. Let's do this, man, as quickly as we can, working in reverse order, starting off with the Sylvan Watchers faction with Branch Arm Lacer. Now, this guy is honestly a pretty solid rare champion fusion component from not too long back. Brings weak version decreased attack on an attack all on his A2, and also places a shield buff on all allies equal to 20% of this champion's max HP for a couple of turns. Obviously, you're going to get a lot more value out of this guy if you build him up all the way to level 60, and with super high health. This is a 310 cooldown skill, can bring a lot of survivability to the likes of a Faction Wars team, and yeah, pretty solid rare just for that reason. 410 cooldown provoke as well on the A3. Not the greatest skill in the world, but you know what? Taking this guy up to level 50, you probably won't regret it. Haven't tested him out myself, but you know what? The stream chat who are watching this video being recorded live right now have convinced me. Branch Arm Lacer, pretty decent one. Tree Shield Knot. Basically every single account in Raid, it feels like, probably has a Tree Shield Knot built to at least level 50 for Faction Wars, purely because of his double revive on his A3, 510 cooldown, best revive in the game as far as rare champions go, and yeah, Tree Shield Knot, you probably won't be disappointed if you take him all the way to level 60, he's just that good, really good egg. Also has a 310 cooldown, heal all allies as well, and weak version increased defense on his A2. Just a damn good one. So we start off with some very strong rares here, man. Ingot Twist Staff is going to continue with that theme. You can take this guy to level 50, put him in a stun set, and he's going to do an incredible job on your account. Has a couple of attack all enemies skills on his A2 and his A3, with the A3 also placing leech debuffs at a 75% land rate bucked. Very good rare champion indeed in a stun set. You don't have to invest much in this guy to get a lot of value from him. And hey man, real quick, if all of this talk of newbie rare champions is getting you nostalgic for the early game of Raid Shadow Legends, then why not start with a new raid account, a new free-to-play challenge or something like that, something like I'm doing with my second account, using the beginner promo link down below at the top of the video description box, man. Hit that link, use that link to download Raid, and you'll get yourself 4 free epic champions on your shiny new account. It's going to be awesome. This is one of the best beginner promo links going, so use it, gosh darn it. And yeah, and alright, back to the video. Shadowbow Terlac is going to be the first dud of this video. Piece of crap. Almost a very interesting champ. Almost pretty good. I almost wanted to shout this guy out. But a 410 cooldown, place a Veil buff on all allies except this champion for 110. A 110 duration Veil on a 410 cooldown. This is kind of like the main course of his kit, if you like. And it just doesn't quite do enough. That's it really. Shadowbow Terlac wouldn't advise investing in this guy at all. Moving on to Bowsmith Flannan, this is just another good one. His A2 is particularly good as an attack all enemies with 100% land rate, decrease speed debuff. Might only be the weak version, but the most important thing about this A2 is that it synergizes with his passive, which has a 50% chance of granting an extra turn when this champion places a decreased speed debuff on 3 or more enemies with that A2. So using that against a wave of enemies, chances are you're going to get off a extra turn, which you can then use either with his ally attack skill on his A3, or just an A1, which has a pretty damn solid land rate stun on a double hitter. You're going to get a hell of a lot of wave control out of your Bowsmith Flannan, and yeah, because he's an ally attack champ, he's going to get more out of your team in general as well. So, pretty damn good rare champ. Take him up to level 50 in my book. Loneblade Rehab, piece of crap. He's going to be our first skip and auto food champion of this video without a doubt. Margrave Greenhawk. So Margrave is a champ that I tried out myself. I'd recommend you food him. I don't think he's good enough, man. I tried him out myself on my main account. Attacks 3 times at random, each hit 70% chance when bugged to placing a provoke debuff for 110. I thought, you know what, on a 310 cooldown, might offer some pretty decent wave control. He doesn't. He's crap. Okay, he didn't feel good to me at all. Not only is the provoke not a 100% land rate, and so sometimes it's a little bit of a dud, but you can use this skill sometimes into waves of like 4 enemies, and like, just because it's 3 attacks at random doesn't mean it's going to hit 3 unique enemies. It can just double hit into the same enemy, or even triple hit into the same enemy if you're really unlucky a couple of times. More often than not, you're applying like 1.8 provokes per wave with this A2. into a wave of enemies. No good, man. Much like Tribuck Colwyn is also no good. Food this guy, he's a piece of crap. Pathfinder Kate is fine. I almost want to recommend this champion because of a quite unique A2, attacks all enemies, 50% chance of increasing the cooldown of a random skill on each target by 2 turns. It's actually not bad interwave content. Is she therefore worth, however, taking up to level 50? I don't know, man. I'm not sure that she brings quite enough to the table, given that this is really all she does. This is her thing, this is her gimmick. Yeah, I don't think I can recommend in good faith Pathfinder Kate. I'd say just go ahead and scrap her, man. On to the Shuriken faction, where we have a very small amount of rare champions, so let's keep it blasting. We've got good old Fnatic over here, who, again, I kind of want to recommend this guy. Is he decent? Is he good enough? It's kind of tough to say. His main skill comes in the form of his A3. It's a strong version, increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. It is on a 4-turn cooldown, so that's not great. The fact that he's going to have a little bit of downtime with the buff there. You compare this to the likes of a Spirit Host, which is a free campaign farmable rare, and she brings a 3-turn cooldown, 50% increased attack buff, and she's free. You know, freely accessible from just farming campaign. This guy's a void rare. You'd like to expect a little bit more here. The little bit more comes in the form of removes 1 random debuff from each ally. Is that good enough to justify taking him up to level 50? I don't know. By the time you get him being a void rare, he's a little bit harder to come by. I can't see many people taking this guy up to level 50 just for that skill alone, but hell, it's your account, man. Maybe you can value him a little bit differently. Vagabond is a piece of crap. Never even look at this guy. Same as Marauder. Same as itinerant? More like fooderant. Get him the hell off my screen. Adachi, some people swear by this guy. I think that he's okay. He just bring a decent land rate-ish, I guess. We're kind of a little bit, I don't know, starved of good options in the Shuriken when it comes to rare champions, to be fair. So maybe people overvalue this guy a little bit just based on that for our Shuriken Faction Wars, but this Provoke A1 is okay. He brings an attack all enemies and shield buffs himself, only himself, for 20% of his max HP on his A2. And it also brings a block debuffs buff and an increased defense buff, weak version on a 3-turn cooldown on his A3. He's fine. He's okay. Again, you're very starved for options in the Shuriken, and so maybe for that reason, Adachi is worth a level 50, unlike Bloodmask, who is only good to be shot in the oven and roasted up into a nice tasty chicken for your tavern. And Assassin is equally a piece of crap. His A1, attack 1 enemy, 75% land rate, 5% poison debuff for 1 turn. Seems fine, until you then remember, wait a minute, Frozen Banshee exists in this game, and she basically does the same thing on her A1, except it's a double hitter, and she's applying twice as many strong poisons. So what the hell are we talking about here, man? Assassin is a piece of crap. Oh, we're not done quite yet, man. We have Life Taker, who, for me at least, is probably... Dude, Life Taker for me I'd suggest that she's probably the best rare champion in the Shuriken faction. Whether or not she's worth taking up to level 50 on your account very much depends on how you're doing for early game Fire Knight progression, right? If you've got a brand new account, you pull yourself a Life Taker, she could be fine to take up to level 50 because of, well, multiple double hitters, right? She's got a double hitter on her A1, a triple hitter on the A2, with each hit having a chance of decreasing the target's 10 meter, and then the third hit also has a 70% chance, or 75% chance rather, of placing strong decreased speed debuff for a couple of turns. Just a great skill to bring into Fire Knight on a 3-turn cooldown. Yeah, she's just a happy little progression rare. Also brings a reflect damage buff on herself as well, on the A3, which can also be quite helpful into Fire Knight. And so she's not exactly great for faction wars, but yeah, worth a level 50 into Fire Knight. If you don't have any better options on your early game account, I think that she's a pretty good option. Onto the dwarves. So we have good old KZ Deepheart, one of the best void rares in the game. This guy's really goddamn good. As long as you build him with 100% crit rate, then yeah, he can't miss his strong version decreased speed on his A1, which is awesome. Great into the Iron Twins dungeon, because he's solid against every affinity for this reason. And also, he's great in a stun set as well. Even without any skill books, you'll notice that both of his attack all enemies skills on 3-turn cooldowns by default, and so yeah, you can throw him in a stun set. He uses up a lot of skill books if you do want to kind of fully max and build him out, but it's not even necessary, to be honest. You can still get a lot of value out of this guy even without any books, and yeah, awesome. I've got a one taken up to level 60. I use him all the time in Doom Tower secret rooms, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, he is great. Next up, we've got good old Dilgol. This guy is sweet. The earlier you pull this guy on your account, the better. In my view, brings a weak version decreased speed on his AO1. Does pretty decent damage to this guy too. He's just a great kind of catch-all rare that's sort of good, or like at least decent, most everywhere in the game, especially all of the early game dungeons and the regular dungeons and stuff like that. He's got to attack all enemies 2 times, with each hit having a just like a 1,000,000,000% chance. Very, very high land rate, strong version, decrease accuracy debuff for a couple of turns. Again, great into multiple dungeons. Dragon, Ice Golem, stop the boss landing their debuffs, their poisons, their stuns, their freezes, those kinds of things. Also helps clear wave content. And on the A3, a happy little boss killer A3 with a triple hitter, each hit with a chance of placing strong version, decreased defense for a couple of turns. Dilgol, great champ, particularly good if you pull him early on. Painsmith, food, brings like a block revive, piece of crap beyond that, not really worth building out. Bulwark, I'd argue this guy is equally a piece of crap, unless you pull him very, very early on your account once again, and you want to use him in your Demon Lord Clan Boss team. This is because of his passive, which when attacked has a chance of extending the duration of all debuffs on the attacker by 1/10. You're taking so many AoE hits from the Demon Lord Clan Boss that this can be pretty good for extending the duration of, you know, decreased attack debuffs and poison debuffs and stuff like that, which is nice. Or even HP burn debuffs, which Bulwark does bring himself on his A2. So he does have his niche uses, but honestly, if you've already got a decent Demon Lord Clan Boss team set up, you know, and you're a few months into the game and that's already been taken care of, then I kind of feel like he becomes food very, very quickly. You can hold on to him for some edge use cases where you just need any HP burner against the Frost Spider boss in Cursed City and Doom Tower. You might be sometimes very, very limited on what HP burners you can use against that boss, and so he can be fine to hold on to for that reason. Gloral, Brutebane, piece of crap, trash, food, chicken, Hatchet Slinger, same deal. Master Butcher is great, one of the rare cheat code champions into a specific boss, that boss being Dreadhorn Bommel in Doom Tower and Cursed City when he shows up. It's all because of his passive and stuff, which I won't go into right now, but long story short, without going like into a full kit breakdown for this guy, just build him to be the highest health champion on your team against the Dreadhorn Bommel boss, and he's going to out-heal a crap load of the boss's bomb damage. Very, very, very solid rare champion indeed. Also brings a 2-turn duration provoke as well on his A2, so just bring a little bit of control and utility outside of just the Dreadhorn Bommel fight. Master Butcher is solid. Madman, piece of crap, food, chicken. You'll see him in the tavern. Boltsmith, food. Delore, Lawkeeper, you know what? Food. Perforator, food. Honor Guard, chicken. Beast Wrestler, just huge crinkle brain, chicken. Candle Guard, solid. This gal is actually pretty damn good. Not only does she hit quite hard, she's not going to hit as hard as like one of your starter champion rares, of course, because those guys just have inflated modifiers to make them more helpful and stuff to new players in the game, and that's understandable, but she's pretty solid, man. She brings 2 attack all enemies style skills, one of them applying weak version of Weaken, and on her A3, she actually brings a self buff of increased attack and 15% increased crit rate, which is really, really good. It means you can build her out with 85% crit rate, and the rest you can put into damage, and she can do a pretty damn good job of being a damage dealer in your Dwarf Faction Wars. I'd recommend take her up to level 50 if you need that extra damage in Dwarf Faction Wars. Consider taking up to 60 if your account is getting on a little bit, and you're just not finding any better Dwarf damage dealers. Frankly, I'm going to have to do that pretty soon on my own account, because yeah, my Dwarf faction is probably the weakest of all of the factions on my account. That said, if you're take her up to level 50 and you find a better damage dealer, you can still put her in a stun set anyway, because again, she has a couple of attack all enemies skills, and so she can still find some utility in a stun set, even if you demote her a little bit from the role of damage dealer. Flailer is a piece of crap. Avid the Alchemage is pretty decent, brings some 10 meter fill and some healing on his A3, which is definitely like the main value you're going to get out of his kit. Is he good enough to suggest taking up to level 50? Depends on what options you're looking at for survivability and just stayability on your Dwarf Faction Wars teams. Maybe you need him, maybe you don't. A little bit situational in my book. Cudgeler is a piece of crap food, as is Stout Axeman, as is Runic Water, and as is Grumbler, and that is all for the Dwarves faction. Next up, man, straight on up into the Knights Revenant, where we're going to be starting off with good old Ashwalker, which, I don't know, man, has anybody built out Ashwalker? Did anybody find him decent? For me, I don't feel like his kit reads that good. He's going to attack all enemies with 100% chance booked of placing weak version of Weaken. Also brings a, you know what man, Ashwalk is actually pretty decent. Now we'll look at the land rate of this stun as well. The stun's a pretty goddamn high land rate on his A2, and it also decreases the 10 meter of all enemies by 10% if this attack is critical. This guy is a fine rare champion to take up to 50 if you just want a little bit more wave control and some debuff action in your nice Revenant. A fine rare champ, going to be a little bit situational. I think by the time most people get an Ashwalker, they just might not need him. That's a counter-pendant though. Centurion, piece of crap. Daywalker, equally a piece of crap. Renegade is actually great. She brings she's one of the only champions in the game that has this very unique skill of decreasing the cooldown of ally skills. She does it by 2 turns on a 5-turn cooldown, and she does do this at the cost of some of her own max HP. So a little bit of a finicky champion, but once you get a Renegade built out, you'll find that she just kind of works alongside any old champion composition. You can put a Renegade in with a team full of legendaries, and suddenly this skill becomes exponentially more powerful, right? Because you're decreasing the cooldown of increasingly powerful teammates that are around her. And so, yeah, she can scale up very, very well. One of the better rare champions in the game. Renegade, well worth investing in my book. Longsword Taurox is equally just a juicy, juicy rare champion, man. Is A2, attack all enemies. Pretty high land rate. Provoke debuff for 1 turn across all enemies on a 3-turn cooldown. It's not like 100% by any means. What is it, like 50% or something? 65% chance of placing provoke on all enemies. Pretty solid. He also begins to counterattack in whenever hit by an enemy under a provoke debuff on his passive, so he'll be counterattacking a hell of a lot, which is also great because his A1 has a chance of placing leech, and so you're going to be getting a lot of extra healing for your team by just spreading this leech debuff around. As far as rare champions go that are well taken up to level 50, I'd say Longsword Taurox is very, very high on that list for the Knights Revenant faction wars. So Crimson Slayer, this is honestly a champion that surprised me a little bit. She never really gets spotlighted that much in other YouTube videos, but I'm going to put a little bit of a spotlight on Crimson Slayer as a fantastic Fire Knight progression champion that I took up to level 50 myself, just for use in early game Fire Knight, and she was great. She brings a triple hitter on her A1 with a chance of placing sleep, and on her A2 it's an attack 1 enemy with a chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 50%, except it's actually a 10 meter steal, right? Fill this champion's turn meter equal to the amount the target loses, and so a little bit of 10 meter steal on the A2. Honestly, just a great, great progression champ into Fire Knight to take up to level 50 if you need her. Guardian, get this guy off my screen. Acolyte, food champion. Gladiator, food champ. Arcanist, food. Coffin Smasher, not bad. Okay, Coffin Smasher is actually okay. He brings a pretty decent kit into early game Clan Boss. Got a triple hit on his A1 that places the strong version of decrease attack, one of the most important debuffs to bring into Demon Lord Clan Boss, so right off the get-go, off to a good stat. And then on his A2, he has that good 75% chance bucked of placing an HP burn debuff for a couple of turns, which is also going to help out, of course, with Clan Boss damage. And so Coffin Smasher, the earlier on you pull this guy into your account, he can be a great, great help into Clan Boss. That said, I'd say take him to level 50, you're probably going to find a better option for Demon Lord Clan Boss sooner rather than later. I'm not sure if I could really recommend taking the guy up to 60 just because he's not that useful into many other areas of the game. Again, unless you want to hold on to just random HP burners here and there on your account for potential future use into Frost Spider, in Kess City and stuff like that. Magus is food, as is Theurgist. Executioner is a pick worth calling out as well. This guy is actually campaign farmable, which is always lovely. He has a chance to stun on his A1 and has big 10 meter decrease on an attack all enemies on his A2, and also places a weak version of decreased speed as well at a 75% clip. And so pretty just solid champion. He is very, very slow at 89 base speed, which is impressively slow, even for a rare champion. So very, very much on the slow side, but does bring very, very solid wave control. And yeah, I think is a fine shout out to take up to good old level 50. At least. Alright, next up, moving on to the good old Dark Elves faction. We actually don't have that many rare champions to go through here, which is a bit surprising. First up, we have good old Harvester. The biggest issue with Harvester seems to be that she's just a lot of single target skills, or increase the cooldown of one of the target skills by 2 turns at random. I don't know, man. Where's the utility for this? If this was like an attack all enemies with a lower land rate cooldown increases, she might have some utility, at least into wave content. But Harvester, for most people, probably going to be food by the time you grab her, unlike Painkeeper, which is another one of those champs that decreases the cooldown of ally skills by 110. It's on a 410 cooldown for Painkeeper. Fantastic, fantastic rare champion. Well worth building out just for this A3 alone. Yeah, very, very good stuff indeed. You probably won't regret building out a Painkeeper. Eviscerator, on the other hand, piece of garbage. Void rare, dude. She lands a couple of weak poisons on her A1, weak version, 2.5%. And then she has a 75% land rate, weak version, decreased defense debuff on her A2, 410 cooldown. What are we talking about, man? War Maiden is in this game, and she brings a 310 cooldown, 100% land rate, strong version, decreased defense, and she's free and campaign farmable. Bro, Eviscerator is a piece of crap. Yeah, hard skip, man. Returner, skip, get rid of him. Paragon, you can do some interesting cheese stuff with Paragon, right? Because he has that 210 cooldown, 210 duration unkillable buff on himself. So you can cheese a lot of content with Paragon. Is he worth building out just for cheesing content? Just for cheesing something like Nightmare Campaign, which is what comes to mind first and foremost for cheesing content with Paragon? I don't know, dude. Nightmare Campaign isn't going anywhere. You can just wait until you have like better legendary champs. In like good regeneration gear and stuff like that, and most people can clear their way through Nightmare Campaign without too much trouble, just in time if you're a little bit patient. Is it worth building out Paragon to get that job done super early on? I'd recommend not. That said, Paragon is extremely situational. Depends if you want to cheese some content with him. Yeah, just do your homework on like YouTube builds and stuff like that for Paragon, and just make sure that he can cheese the content that you're looking for. Cold Heart, best rare champion in the game. Honestly, might not even... I'm not going to spend too long reviewing this champion. Frankly, she's great, okay? Quadruple hitter on her A1. Everybody knows Cold Heart. Great into basically all content. All dungeon content, a lot of Doom Tower bosses, stuff like that. Huge damage on a A3. Attack one enemy, decrease the target's 10 meter by 100%. Extra 30% chance of inflicting a crit, so you only have to build it with 70% crit chance. A little bit of accuracy for the 10 meter decrease, of course, but besides that, Cold Heart is a dungeon clearing queen. Insanely good. Best rare champion in the game. Yeah, build her out. That's it, really. Wanderer is a piece of crap. Food, as is Hexweaver. Spirit Host, honestly, worth building up to level 50? Probably. Campaign farmable rare champ. Like we mentioned earlier, she's got that 310 cooldown, strong version, increased attack buff on all allies for a couple of turns. She also brings remove all debuffs on all allies and a block buffs debuff for 1 turn. This isn't a 510 cooldown, so it's not the strongest version of this skill that you can come by, but I think she brings enough utility to the table and is most importantly campaign farmable and therefore accessible enough to justify taking up to level 50 for faction wars for most people. Spirit Host, good champ, honestly, pretty damn solid rare. Ordinator, get him off my screen. Steel Boya, chicken, kill. Obviously great. I don't need to cover kill. Again, one of the better rare champs in the game, to be honest, all things considered. Yeah, very good indeed. Hopefully he was your starting champion. Judge is honestly a pretty solid rare champ. The earlier on you pull a Judge on your account, the better, just because he brings such a wide variety of debuffs on his passive. So with each hit he throws out, has a 30% chance of placing the strong version of decreased accuracy, speed, attack, and decreased defense on the target for 1 turn. And he has an attack all enemies on the A2 as well. So just getting him as fast as possible and as many turns in as possible. And then as long as you have the accuracy required, you're going to be triggering his passive, hopefully as often as possible off of that A2. Yeah, a pretty solid red champ. Probably worth taking up to level 50 just because he covers so many roles. Oh, and that's actually all for the Dark Elves. Next up we have the good old Undead Hordes faction, starting off with Bloat Wraith, and this one's a little bit of a close call, to be honest. His A2 is so close to being good that I'm tempted to say that he's worth taking up to level 50, but probably not, right? It's an attack all enemies with 100% land rate, fully booked up, chance of placing the weak version of decreased defense, also has fully booked a 40% chance of placing a fear debuff for 110 on enemies that get the decreased defense, and so the fear debuff gives enemies a chance at missing their turn. 40% land rate on an attack all, it's a 310 cooldown. It's not bad, it's this close to being good in my book, probably not quite good enough in terms of wave control, for me at least. This is one of those that's kind of close to the wire. Be interesting to hear what you guys think. Skeleton, generally speaking, piece of crap. Stitch Beast, piece of crap. Seducer, really, really good. Very, very unique rare champion that unlocks an extra skill in the form of a strong ally protect buff on a 410 cooldown, but only when he's got Temptress on the same team. Not a great rare champion over here, but even without Temptress though, very, very strong kit on this guy. His A3 is kind of spotlighted a lot by other content creators, and for good reason. It's a 410 cooldown, increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns, and a 2-turn duration block debuffs buff as well. Kind of unheard of for rare champions to get a 2-turn duration block debuffs buff, and so for that reason alone, he's definitely worth some consideration. Also brings an attack all on his A2 with a chance of placing decreased attack. Weak version brings quite a lot to the table. Honestly, Seducer might be auto worth taking up to level 50, at least just for that reason. Worth considering at the very least. Hollow is chicken. Doomscreech is pretty solid. Brings 10 meter fill in the form of a 30% 10 meter fill and a strong version increased defense buff on allies for 2 turns as well on his A2. Just for this A2 skill alone. It's on a 310 cooldown bucked as well, by the way. Very, very good skill. Just for this A2 alone, probably worth taking up to a level 50 champ. The only kind of condition for not taking this guy up for use in faction wars and stuff like that, because he's great in like go first arena teams in the early game and stuff like that as well, but if you're going to take this guy up in faction wars, just make sure that you don't have the epic champion, whose name I forgot. Okay, I swear to god, there's an epic champion. Seeker, that's the one. Seeker is like this guy's big brother, and just kind of does the same job but better. So unless you pull a Seeker, then you might not want to take your Doomscreech up. But yeah, if you don't have a Seeker, Doomscreech is a great stand-in until you find a Seeker, right? The epic alternative. Arbalester is a chicken, as is Corpulent Cadaver, as is Ghoulish Ranger, as is Rotting Mage. Bone Knight, some early game justification maybe for farming Spirit Keep for the heal reduction. I did that on my main account. I replaced him very, very quickly. I kind of regret taking the guy up to level 50 on my main account, so I'm probably just going to say food. Food. Grinner is one of those rare Reviver champions, and so just getting a Reviver champ up on your faction is just always good for finishing faction wars, right? For getting 3 stars on all of those faction wars stages. And so for the Revive alone, Grinner is probably worth taking up to a level 50. Also brings an attack all enemies with a chance of removing a random buff from each target as well, so brings a bit of utility there on the A2. Also, Grinner, just solid, okay? Unlike Sorceress, Gravechill Killer, she's fine. You could build her up to level 50, but only if you have her partnered up with the next champion we're about to cover in this video, because I know who the next champion is. Gravechill Killer is a good poison champion, but only if you have somebody applying the poison sensitivity debuff on your team at the same time. Otherwise, she's a very, very weak rare champion, so only be using Gravechill Killer if you have her playing alongside a Frozen Banshee. Even then, if your starting champion is Kale, I kind of feel like just Frozen Banshee and Kale kind of do a better job than Frozen Banshee and Gravechill Killer. And so even then, I'd say Gravechill Killer is probably going to be food for like 99% of people, but Frozen Banshee, one of the better rares in the game, especially for the early game, and especially if your starting champion is not Kale with a double hitter, giving you, what, 100% chance fully booked up for placing 2 strong poison debuffs for 2 turns if the target's under poison sensitivity, which of course the Frozen Banshee brings on a A3. Very, very, very good indeed into Demon Lord Clan Boss. If you do not need her though in Demon Lord Clan Boss, then she falls off very, very quickly, right? That's her main use in the game. So if you don't need her for Demon Lord, then she becomes a chicken very, very quickly. Temptress is a chicken. Banshee is great in a stun set. She has multiple skills, including even a A1 that are attack all enemies style skills, and so level her up to level 50, put her in a stun set, get her nice and fast, and you really can't go wrong. Yeah, she's going to repay you with a hell of a lot of value for minimal cost investment. Next up, man, we have the good old Demon Spawn faction, where we have food moving straight into the fastest campaign farmer in the game. I believe at least Fellhound is still the fastest campaign farmer in the game with a pretty decently hitting A1. Build this champ out with just enough damage and it will one-shot its way through all of the waves on campaign brutal 12-3. And yeah, if you need yourself a campaign farmer and you get a Fellhound, congratulations, man, you've solved your campaign farming game mode, if you like. Marquise is food, Ifrit is food, Hellfreak is food, Hellborn Sprite has some use, but only in the Infinity Wixwell Clan Boss team. And so if you're in your early game and you pull a Hellborn Sprite, you might just want to put her in your vault and just leave her sitting there for a while for the day, like if the day eventually comes that you find, or like pull from a Sacred Shard or whatever, a Vault Keeper Wixwell, then you can start to set up one of the best Clan Boss teams in the game, if not the best Demon Lord Clan Boss team in the game with the Infinity Wixwell team. Besides that, she's kind of useless, to be honest. She's one just to hold on to for that team. Abyssal brings in a tackle enemies on his A1, so right away can find some use in a stun set, bit of healing on his A2, and multiple weak versions of buffs on his A3. Great Faction Wars champ. Beyond that, not going to find much use for the guy, but you know what? Put him in a stun set, maybe consider disabling his A2 in Faction Wars so that he spams just more of his A1 and keeps the buffs active on his A3, and you can get some pretty good value out of Abyssal in that stun set. Marcus, piece of crap. Hellfang, chicken. Petrifia, some people go ahead and proclaim that Petrifia is like a rival to Frozen Banshee. As far as I've seen, she almost competes with Frozen Banshee, but doesn't quite do enough. She does get to apply poison sensitivity debuff. It's actually a triple hitter that attacks in at random on her A3, but of course if you're against Demon Lord, all of those hits are going to hit the same target, which is great because if all hits land on the same target, also place a 5% poison debuff for a couple of turns. So she can do some work against Demon Lord Clan Boss. Frozen Banshee, though, is going to be the better option over Petrifia Rockroot, in my view. Tormentor is a chicken. Diabolist is one of the most underrated rare champions in the game that doesn't get enough shoutouts because people are sick of seeing, right, you're farming campaign 12 all the time to farm up new food champions, and so you've got Diabolists coming out of your ears, right? You can't move for Diabolists on your account most of the time, but it means that she's very, very easy to max out because you're getting copies of her all the time. She brings some 10 meter fill and 10 meter decrease on the A3, and a strong version increase speed buff on all allies as well on the A2. And I believe of all of the epic and rare Demon Spawn champions in the game, in fact, is it just like all Demon Spawn champions in the game? I almost want to venture she might be the only one that brings strong version increased speed, which is kind of insane. It's definitely between all of the rares and the epics, she's the only champion. So she's like the only accessible Demon Spawn champion, at least, that brings strong version increased speed, which is like a remarkable stat, or like a remarkable fact to learn. And so for that reason alone, yeah, take her up to level 50. You probably won't regret it. Oh, and she's actually the last rare champion for the Demon Spawn, man. So, next, moving on to the Orcs, where, holy crap, man. Are you guys ready for this? Hang on, let me just double check this. Blah, 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 blah. Nope, it's actually what I'm thinking. Food, 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 decent. Okay, and even then Gallic is like the weakest starting champion, you know, so he's like, okay, I guess. I think Gallic is one of the only starting champions where if you pull him and you're like 3 or 4 months into your account still, he still could be worth building out just because all of the other rare champions are so bad for the Orcs faction, right? And just so terrible that it can be worth building out the Gallic anyway, up to like a level 50 or maybe even a level 60. God, am I actually going to say that? I'm actually going to recommend that. No, I'm not saying that, okay? Maybe to level 50, just for a damage dealer in Faction Wars, that's like quite budget. It can still be worth it, just because he just has no competition, man. Chopper's a piece of crap, Death Chanter is just awful, and that's all. That's the Orc rares, man. I'm going to have some people chime in and say, oh, maybe like Ironclad or Spikehead. I can't remember which one sometimes people recommend, but I'd recommend you turn all of these but Gallic into chicken without a second thought. So that's the Orcs faction done. Nice and quick, boys. And alright, man. Next up for the Skinwalkers faction, starting us off with good old Panthera. This is supposed to be built as like a budget option champion to help you get started into Fire Knight, but frankly, it being a Void rare in particular, by the time you start pulling your Void shards on a new account, you almost definitely have some better options to take into Fire Knight, man, because Panthera is not that impressive even as a Fire Knight counter. Triple hitter A1 might look great. Each critical hit, so you have to build it with 100% crit as well, which in the early game is already a pain to do on your damage dealers, let alone a utility champion that you're only going to use in one area of the game. But each critical hit only then has a chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by only 3%. Like, dude, it should just be each critical hit will decrease the turn meter all the time of the target by, like, I don't know, 10%? I think that would be fair. You know, that might make it competitive with Armiger as a 10 meter controller in the early game. Armiger being an uncommon champion, by the way. Yeah, Panthera, not worth building. I don't know, 99% of the time going to be food for people. Bloodhorn is food. Lammerbear is the ugliest champion in the game, and therefore is just food. Grappler, food. Probably. His shield buff is actually okay on his A3. It is on a 410 cooldown, which sucks a little bit, but places shield buff on all allies equal to 20% of their HP, and a reflect damage buff on allies as well for 210s. It's like a fine skill. If this was one turn shorter in total cooldown, I might even recommend him. The rest of his kit is not that impressive. Gonna be food, probably for most people. Channeler is food. Nalhorn is grit. This champion is amazing. 310 cooldown, place a provoke debuff on all enemies for 110 is immense. Also, you'll notice that it says place a provoke debuff on enemies, not like attack all enemies and then have a chance of placing provoke. It doesn't work like that. Because Nalhorn is not dealing damage with this provoke, it means that he can't weak hit into negative affinities, right? So he's a spirit champion. Normally he would weak hit into magic affinity champions. Not a problem with the skill for Nalhorn's A2. Also brings a 210 duration unkillable buff as well on a 310 cooldown on his A3. Yeah, great rare champion for wave control. Almost definitely going to be taken up to level 50 for most plays, if not all the way up to 60. Tolog is another one of those champs that brings a revive as a rare champion and is therefore automatically, for a lot of people, taken up to level 50 just because, yeah, you want to max out your faction wars and get all of those stats collected as early as you can on your account. He also brings a good amount of healing as well. And so Meatcarver Tolog is one of the better rares added to the game for the Skinwalkers. Unlike Blood Painter, who is beef, aka food, Fleshmonger is probably food. Man, have I heard some people recommend Fleshmonger before? Ooh. I was about to sleep on Fleshmonger, dude. I think I was about to sleep on this guy. Okay, so the problem with Fleshmonger is that while he gets to land a 75% land rate decreased defense debuff for a couple of turns, which is actually pretty damn good. Very damn good, actually. It is on a 410 cooldown. So you have got to bear that in mind. I'd recommend, if you are going to build out Fleshmonger, take him to level 50 and then just leave him there. That's fine. Definitely doesn't deserve to be taken up to 60. But yeah, this year 3, I almost slept on that for a second, man. Pretty decent rare champion overall, I think. I haven't leveled him up on my account, and I was fine without him. So obviously it's situational in terms of what you need on your Skinwalkers teams. Greybeard is actually a pretty damn good wave controller, to be honest. He's got a pretty damn high land rate provoke on his A1, which is lovely, especially because he buffs himself up with a counterattack buff as well, so can get off a good amount of wave control there. Then he's going to attack all enemies with the chance of placing freeze on his A2, so not a bad wave controller. Not worth taking up to level 60 because, frankly, you probably won't use him anywhere else in the game besides faction wars and secret rooms and stuff like that for a little while, but not a bad rare, all things considered. Next up, moving straight on into the Lizard Men, we of course open things up with good old Teryx the Restless, who kind of comparable to Longsword Toryx, who we covered in the Knights Revenant faction. He brings in attack all enemies with a 75% land rate provoke debuff for 110. It is on a 410 cooldown. He is a void rare, so he's a bit harder to get your hands on, and so by the time you pull him, you might find that you just don't need him so much in faction wars anymore, but you know what? Still a decent-ish rare champion. Quite situational if you need the wave control in something like Faction Wars. You could build him out. For most people, you're probably going to pull him a little bit too late for it to be worth building out Teryx, but not a bad rare all the same. Cagebound, get him in the sea, not quite good enough. Haruspex is one of those rare champion revivers once again, but you might not want to automatically build out a Haruspex. Why is that? Well, it's because the Broadmoor fusion is available to all players, and yeah, once you've fused yourself a Broadmoor, that might just give you the revive that you're looking for to take into Lizardmen Faction Wars. And so, just because Broadmoor exists in the game and is so accessible to get your hands on as a reviver, that automatically kind of devalues Haruspex just a little bit in terms of how you might prioritize ranking up champs on your account. Therefore, yeah, take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. That said, Haruspex is still a very, very good rare champion in his own right. Just for Faction Wars, you might not need him quite as much as you think. Metal Shaper is one of those cheat code rare champions that can really unlock a certain area of the game. On this occasion, it's Scarab King in the Doom Tower, because he brings a 210 cooldown, 210 duration shield buff on all allies for 210s. And of course, against the Scarab King boss, you don't want to be attacking into that boss ever without a shield buff active. Else just really, really bad things are going to happen. We're not going to go into it in this video. because, yeah, it would take forever to explain that boss's mechanics and stuff like that, but this is a great rare champion option to just keep in your vault until that boss becomes a problem for you. Then all you've got to do is build him out to get fully booked up, and then build him to be the fastest champion on your team so that he has 100% uptime on his shield buffs. And yeah, you're going to do great into that boss. Slasher is food, Flinger is food, Hurler is food, Skull Swan is, yeah, screw it, food. Walker is a chicken, 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 chicken. Oh my god. I almost want to say chicken for Muckstalker as well, but he has a 210 cooldown, 100% land rate sleep on his A2, which can be a good starting debuff to bring into the Sand Devil's Necropolis dungeon to just land the sleep on the boss immediately. It can be quite helpful, and so you might want to put Muckstalker in your vault. Beyond, like, the one single use he has, though, in the Sand Devil's dungeon, not really useful anywhere else in the game. Very, very situational, so just bear that edge case use in mind. Oh, and that is actually all for the Lizard Men. So moving swiftly on to the Ogryn tribes. Champ number 1, good old Mycolus. What the hell does this champ do again? Shield buff on this champion for 2 turns. Ally protect, it's only 25% version. I'm not sure that this champ does enough to justify being built out. The passive is interesting. Decrease the damage all allies receive by 5%. This champion receives that damage instead. And so, you know, that makes up for the fact that it's only a weak version of Ally Protect. This is a fine champion if you're just looking for some extra survivability across your Ogryn tribes teams. But again, with it being a void rare, by the time that you pull this champ, you might find that you just found some better options for Faction Wars. Gear Grinder is one of those rare champs that brings a revive, this time on a 5-turn cooldown. Not bad. Little bit of AoE healing as well on the A2. Kind of just like a much, much weaker version of Tree Shield Knot, to be honest. But for the Ogryn Tribes faction, not bad if you're looking for a rare reviver. Bellower, one of the best rare champs in the game. You can also use Bellower as a campaign farmer, similar to Fellhound, just because if you build him up with enough damage, all of his skills are attack all enemies style skills, and so, yeah, works perfectly in the campaign farmer role for like a 7 or 8 second campaign clear. Very, very good indeed. But even besides that, yeah, brings all kinds of weak versions of debuffs that if you get a good blessing on your Bellower, you can of course key in the blessing that gives you the chance of rolling into the strong versions of these debuffs when they get applied up, and so Bellower can suddenly become an absolute debuff spamming machine. Also functions very, very well in a stun set as well. Honestly, one of the best rare champions in the game. Really, really excellent stuff. S tier champ to take up to level 60 for basically all wave content that you can play Ogryn tribes in. Very, very good, man. Rock Beast does have a chance of placing Provoke at a pretty high land rate on the A1. Is a pretty solid champ as a result, just because of that. But also on the A3, it might be on a 410 cooldown, but it is a 100% land rate strong version decrease speed debuff on attack all enemies on the A3. Honestly, very, very good into wave content. Again, as I've said 100 times in this video, Void Affinity rare champion. You might have better options than Rock Beast for wave control and just controlling waves and faction wars and stuff by the time you get your hands on Rock Beast, but still worth consideration. Is a good rare champion in his own right, even if you don't need him by the time you get your hands on him. Flesh Eater is food. Siegebreaker is food. 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 I almost said food again immediately, but Roughstone does have an attack all enemies on the A1, so it can be used in a stun set. I think for 90% of people, probably going to be food, just because the rest of his kit doesn't really do anything that's really that impressive. And the A1 doesn't have any extra bonus effects either, so could use in a stun set, could take up to level 50 if you want for Ogryn tribes. Probably going to be food for quite a lot of people, I want to say. Magma Blood, food, 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 food. Trash. Oh, and that's all. Actually, is Rocktooth trash? Yeah, Rocktooth is trash, man. Food, goddammit. Okay, on to the Barbarians, man. Alright, man, we're on the home straight now, boys, for the Barbarians faction. Starting off with Scrapper. This guy is honestly a piece of garbage. He does have a use edge case, where he's pretty useful into the Scarab King boss in Doom Tower, because he gets to place a shield buff on himself on his A1, which is great, which is fine. However, he has the big drawback of, I don't know, dude, you could just get Metal Shaper, because because Scrap is a void rare and he's much harder to get your hands on, you could just get Metal Shaper instead and have constant shield buffs up across an entire team. Scrapper, I don't know, he's got like a niche use case, but it's such a tiny niche and such a pointless niche that he's probably not worth investing resources in. Ragemonger is food, Orcs is food, Skirmish is food, Tiger Soul is food. Soulborn Boya is one of the best stun set champions in the game. She doesn't attack all enemies on A1 and has the added bonus of having an additional 25% chance of inflicting a crit, meaning you can build her out with that 75% crit chance, put the rest of those stats into damage in that stun set, and she can be controlling enemies as well as hitting pretty hard while she does it. And also on her A3 as well, she's got a single target hitter, right? Attacks one enemy, has a 100% chance of fully depleting the target's turn meter, also has a bonus chance of inflicting a crit as well. And so Soulbond, yeah, great in a stun set, great for just deleting single targets, great for wave control. Very, very good rare champion indeed. Bloodbraid is food. Berserker, I'm tempted to like soft recommend him, but not really. He's going to attack all enemies 2 times, doesn't hit that hard, grants an extra 10 if the target is killed by his A2. Nah, Berserker's food, man. He used to be good like way back in the day when Raid was first released, I believe. He's been power crept like crazy. Screw that guy, man. Anointed is a rare champion that you might want to keep 1 or 2 copies of this guy in your vault for future use. He has a triple hitter A1 that has a chance of placing freeze, and while he's not that great in the early game, Anointed can be one of those champions that you can later use into hard mode Fire Knight if you just need champions that are multi-hitters that apply freeze debuffs, you know. Hard mode Fire Knight is one of those bosses where you've got to build a very, very specific team that benefits specifically from multi-hitters that plays freeze, and so Anointed can be a gateway champion to help unlock that area of the game for your account. Is he the best option for that? Will you find better options before you get to hard mode Fire Knight? Probably, but having him there as a backup option, so you at least have the potential of looking into hard mode Fire Knight, could be something that you hold on to in Anointed for. Slayer is food. War Maiden is insanely good. 100% land rate, strong version, decreased defense on a 310 cooldown, campaign farmable. Yeah, S tier rare champ. Very, very good indeed. Sentinel is great. Brings a little bit of passive healing every second turn on himself, which is just lovely. And his A1 is a very, very high land rate provoke for a rare champion as well. So can be a great champ for just a little bit of wave control, but is also great for beginners that are getting started in Doom Tower and want a way to provoke the Magma Dragon, which is one of those bosses that you've got to maintain a provoke on that boss at all times. Sentinel can do that job for you. Great budget option. Yeah, worth keeping situationally your Sentinel. Trugor is food. Doomstrider is food. Hill Nomad is a chicken. Elder's a chicken. So is Marked. Some people might disagree with Marked. You can use her in Clan Boss for like the block debuffs. I don't know, man. I feel like she's been power crept like crazy. I feel like there's no need in building out a Marked anymore for that job. That's just me. Some people might disagree. That is the Barbarians faction wrapped up. Moving on to the Sacred Order, where, oh my god, man, this is rough. This is rough right here, man. This is really rough. Okay, it's gonna be another one of those, boys. It's gonna be another one of those, man. Food. 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 Food, food, food. All the way to Mother Superior, who is a decent healer champ. She brings some direct healing as well as some continuous heal buffs on her A3. She's okay for a little bit of added survivability into faction wars. Definitely not worth taking up to level 60. Could take her up to like a level 40 or a level 50 where you're just getting started and you're kind of desperate for just a little bit of extra survivability options. Beyond that, for most people's accounts, probably just going to food them Mother Superiors. Maiden, food. Food, War Priest, food, Penitent is food. Templar is actually pretty good. I almost slept on this guy a little bit until the chat raged at me. Thanks for reminding me, boys. But yeah, his A2 is actually very, very good. It's a 310 cooldown, attack 4 times at random, each hit with a 50% chance when bucked to placing provoke. Also places a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn. So pretty good. Like, pretty decent control, a little bit random, of course, but pretty decent control overall into waves. The block damage, helping out with survivability a hell of a lot. And you can even cheese your way through Dreadhorn Bommel using just a Templar if you've got the gear to do it. Not that I'd recommend you try out that strat, but it is a really, really funny one to look up on YouTube. And just see like the gear requirements, because it's insane and you won't be able to do it in the early game. I'm not recommending you do that, but it is kind of funny how you can get a lot done with rare champions with incredibly good gear, you know. But there you go, man. That's Templar. Renouncer is food, 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 god, food, Castigator, worth considering as like an alternative healer to bring into early faction wars instead of Mother Superior. Heals the ally with the lowest HP by 20% of this champion's max HP, then equalizes the HP levels of all allies according to the highest health ally, I believe. Then grant this champion extra 10, so it's actually a 310 cooldown skill, fully booked because it gives him an extra 10, you know? So Castigator is an okay healing option that you can consider. Again, for most people pulling Castigator, probably going to be food. Same as Purgator, or whatever that guy was called. Hospitaler, Witness, Aethel, all the way up to Aethel, basically everything looking like food. But yeah, Aethel is pretty damn good. Some people tout her as maybe like the second best starting champion. Third for some people, second for others. Yeah, she's a pretty damn good champ, just like all of the starting champs, though. There's not really too much more to say about that. Just the damage modifiers and stuff on starting champions tend to be very, very good indeed, you know. Okay, moving on into the high elves, we have Selenia Nightcloak, probably the best Omega budget HP burner rare champion in the game, I want to say, mostly because not only does she place HP burn on her A2, which can be required into certain bosses, but on her A3 she also brings an increased accuracy buff on herself as well, meaning you can afford to build her with, well, it's just a little bit easier to hit the accuracy that you need to actually land the HP burn debuff. That's it, really. She's very, very situational, of course. She's not going to be the kind of champ that, ooh, you got to build her out, you know, at level 50 or 60 or whatever for faction wars, but she can be one that you keep in the vault or just keep as like a backup HP burner for like a Cursed City boss or something like that. Reliquary Tender is one of the best rare champions in the game. Not only does she bring a revive, but she brings a 310 cooldown, remove all debuffs from all allies, along with a continuous heal. S tier stuff, level 50 at least, if not all the way up to level 60. She's one of those that's kind of just that good, and you'll get a lot of great use out of Reliquary Tender in multiple areas of the game. Interceptor is food, Medicus is food, Prosecutor is slept on, is what she is. She's actually pretty good. She's going to tackle enemies with a 75% land rate, strong decrease speed debuff on a 310 cooldown. This is actually very, very nice, man. I think that a lot of people honestly sleep on Prosecutor for wave control. She's great. Her damage is fine as well, and she brings a little bit of 10 meter control as well on a double hitter A1. I think Prosecutor's slept on quite a bit. She doesn't quite make the grade for like one of the best rare champions in the game or whatever, but as far as early game like faction wars and stuff goes, awesome. Like, this is not a common debuff to have on an AoE for even epic champions, let alone rare champions, man. It might only be 75% land rate, but pretty goddamn solid all the same. Hyria is a very, very situational rare champion. If you pull a super early on, then she does bring a triple hitter with chances of placing strong poison on the A2. If you need that for Demon Lord Clan Boss, you can consider building her out to level 50 and using her there for a little while. Of course, Frozen Banshee is going to be better overall, but Hyria is a good option. If you don't need it for Demon Lord, then she's food. Fencer, decent champ. For me, I don't feel like she quite makes the grade. I think I just go ahead and food her. That's up to you, man. Magister is food. Eris is good in a Demon Lord Clan Boss as well. Also in a Toxic set with a counter attack on her passive, right? So she can get off quite a lot of A1 attacks and stack up those poisons using a Toxic set. And she does also bring an increased speed buff as well on her A2 and the ability to remove a random debuff from all allies. So she could be a damn good option in Demon Lord Clan Boss. For that reason, I think that she's worth a shout out, but she is one of those champs that falls off quite quickly if you're not using her in Demon Lord Clan Boss, so do just bear that in mind. Adjudicator is food. Elhain, starter champ, pretty damn good. Avenger, food. Apothecary, S tier. This guy is very, very good indeed. Triple hitter A1, great starter champ to get you involved in Fire Knight for the first time, brings increased speed buff, brings 10 meter fill on a 310 on his A3, and some healing on the A2. Yeah, Apothecary, amazing, amazing champ. Kinda just one of those rares that's good everywhere if you get him early, and man, am I happy that I pulled my Apothecary on my free-to-play account already. And alright, man, onto the Bannerlords faction, the last faction of this video. Oh my god, man. My voice needs the rest. Let's do this, man. Good old Denid, the Tusk Knight, newest rare champion added to the game at the time of recording this video, has a chance of placing Provoke at a 40% clip, fully booked on his A1. Pretty damn good, and is, I believe, one of the only, if not the only rare champion in the game that brings a strong version of Strengthen on his A2. Very, very unique, very, very nice. It's also an attack all enemies, and it's on a 310 cooldown, 2 turn duration buff, so very, very solid skill indeed. Honestly, I think Denid is very, very solid. If you're looking for some Faction Wars champs, I know I'll be building this guy out to level 50 on my free-to-play account at a minimum. May even take him all the way up, depending on how useful I find him. But yeah, great red champion. Very, very solid, man. Dagger, also solid if extremely, extremely squishy. She does bring and attack all enemies with a 75% chance of placing strong version of decreased defense. Just a solid champion overall. Not bad. Not bad, worth considering for your Faction Wars, at least for Banner Lords in my book, if probably not worth taking up to level 60. Steadfast Marshal, food. Vanguard is food. Chevalier is food. Riskam is food. Halberdier is food. Conqueror, food. Cataphract, food. Spymaster, worth considering? Maybe? Maybe? I don't know, man. Some people swear by this guy. I can't say I'm that much of a believer, but he does bring and attack all enemies with a 60% chance of placing block buffs on an AoE. On his A2. Interesting. Very, very unique for a rare champion. Is that good enough? I mean, he brings also like a double provoke as well on 2 random enemies. On the A3, Spymaster's a strange one. He's a strange one, man. Like, where are you going to be using this guy? A little bit of wave content. He's long cooldowns as well, though. 510 cooldown A3 booked. And a 410 cooldown A2. You could get some use out of him into things like early arena and then use him in Faction Wars, but even then I feel like he'll eventually be replaced in Faction Wars by just better wave controllers. Spymaster's an awkward one. Very, very situational. Very, very tough to call. Quista is food. Bombardier is food. Courtier is food. Preserver is food. Misericord is a chicken. Myrmidon chicken. Grandmaster chicken. Valerie, not bad, man. She brings a little bit of shielding, a little bit of healing on her A3, which is a super, super long cooldown, by the way. But again, she's campaign farmable, and she does bring a buff duration extender on her A2, as well as a small increase attack buff. Honestly, just the value of being able to increase the duration of buffs on allies by 110 on any skill cannot be underestimated. It's a very, very nice skill to have, and Valerie will of course find her place in any kind of budget Wixwell Infinity Clan Boss teams, and so it's worth at least keeping your Valeries in the vault. And I guess we'll just leave it at that, as whether or not you want to use her in Faction Wars in the meantime while you're waiting for Wixwell to show up. Then that's up to you. Crosswoman is food. Ursula the Mourner is an epic, and so we're not talking about her in this video. And my god, we made it. We're done. Holy crap. We actually made our way through it, boys. We made our way through it. Oh my god. And soon as we made it through all of this video, my god, I gotta rest my voice real quick. But before I head out, hey, if you're looking to start off a new Raid Shadow Legends account, do so by using my beginner promo link, which as always is linked down below, man, in the pinned comment and at the top of the video description. Click that link right now, man, to start off a new raid account with 4 free epic champions. It is the best beginner promo link going, so you might as well go ahead and get that done, man. Just make sure that you're signed out of Plarium Player before clicking on that gosh darn link to guarantee that you get all those sweet juicy rewards when you create a new raid account using that link, man. So, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you guys did enjoy this one, and I'm going to catch all of y'all just a tad bit later. My god.